Welcome to the Nice Girls Wear Scrubs podcast. I'm Allie,
I'm Cindy.
and we are a mother-daughter nursing duo on a mission to change the nursing narrative and unsubscribe to the typical mean girls club. Scorpios by astrology and nurses by choice, we want to share stories, create community, and give you actionable items to love your nursing career again. So let's jump into the episode. If you don't know us, and this is your first time meeting us, I'm Allie.
I'm Cindy.
And this is my mom.
This is my
We
daughter.
we have both been nursing a combined. I've been a nurse 9 years. How many years have you been a nurse?
40 years.
And I never wanted to be a nurse. What about you?
I actually think I always wanted to be a nurse. And I remember you didn't want to be a nurse. You used to tell us you were going to be a doctor.
I know, I remember, I tell this story all the time. I was like 5 years old in the pediatrician's office, and she was like, "Oh, are you going to be a nurse like your mom?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to be a doctor." So I knew I always
Absolutely.
wanted to work with kids.
Yes. Hmm.
But we're going to talk a little bit about ourselves since this is the first episode. It'd probably be a little bit rough because this is our first time hosting a podcast, so bear with us. But I'm Allie. I am 35 years old. I turned 35 this year. Also, fun fact, we have the same birthday, November
Yes.
16th. And my nephew and her grandbaby also has the same birthday. So there's a fun fact about us that you probably didn't know. Um, I have been a nurse for 9 years, and it has felt like a lifetime because of how many different things I've done as a nurse. And something that we talk about all the time, and something that was very different when I started as a nurse and when she started as a nurse, is that this idea that you have to stay in your nursing job for a really long time and that you can't move around. But I think the narrative has changed that it's okay to change your role as a nurse and it's okay to change your job. And that's something I feel like I've taught her in all of my moves, even though they were lateral moves. And we'll go into this in my nursing journey on the second episode. But I've made a lot of moves. I've done a lot of different things as a nurse. And currently I start next week as a remote triage nurse for pediatrics. So I'm super excited to start that. And I also started as a clinical instructor. And just like this podcast, I want to change nursing from the inside out. And I really just want to help these students because I was talking to the group that I was with on Saturday, so yesterday, about their experiences being nurses. Most of the people on that unit have been nurses for 3 to 5 years. And they all had funny nursing stories or traumatizing nursing school stories. And I just don't want my students to have those. And yes, nursing school is hard, but I think clinical is the part that we're most excited for because it's practice. And that's really why I wanted to be a clinical instructor. So, Mom, what about you?
So I've been a nurse for 40 years. I am 61 years young. And I'm so proud of my daughter because I feel like she has actually, I used to think about like, well, I'm gonna cultivate her, and now she's a nurse, and she is gonna like kind of learn from me. But what happened is I ended up learning so much from her, but I think in turn she learned from me as well. And yes, I come from the old school of, you hear those things, we eat our young, which I never resonated with. I could tell you lots of stories, especially when I first was a brand new nurse. I was super young, very naive, and I just followed what those seasoned nurses did. And so I just wanted to be accepted and wanted to be like them because they had the experience and they were the ones that seemed like they knew everything, but yet the culture might not been what should have been carried on. And so I have actually I was trying to add it up while she was talking, because I believe in my nursing career, I have been probably at the same amount of facilities as Allie has in our difference of time. But I've worked in critical care and I stayed in critical care for like 10 years. And then I went to the ER and stayed almost 20 years. And then I ended up in the urgent care. I did have some part-time jobs that I moonlighted in some things, but they weren't my full-time job because that rhetoric was so ingrained in my brain, like stay at your facility, stay in the discipline that you were taught, don't branch out and don't learn something new. And so with Ali and I talking and bouncing things off each other, yeah, there was a lot of like little rough parts, but we ended up like kind of working together. And that's what got us thinking about doing something for the profession.
So I vividly remember I was driving home one day, and as all of my ideas start, I had been on a couple podcasts. I had never thought I wanted to start a podcast. I was like, everyone's doing that. Like, why do I want to contribute to more noise when I already have so much content that I put out? And I had three people in specifically tell me, you need to share your story. I don't know what it is. I don't know what story it is that you need to share, but like you need to put your stories out there. And I just feel like you need to, speak. And I love speaking at events, but I think the podcast kept coming up, like a podcast, and I really didn't know like what to do a podcast about because I love personal finance. I love what I teach about. I love career stuff. But nothing really hit me as something I'd want to like get on and talk about every week. And I was like, I don't really want to do this for me. I want to do it to serve people and to bring awareness to things. And we were talking and we weren't even talking about a podcast. Like we will get on the phone, like driving home from work, and we talk almost every day. And we just have conversations about everything. We have conversations about life. We have conversations about nursing. We have all these good ideas. I remember my mom wanted to write a book at one point, of all the stories that she has. And she just has so much knowledge. And she, was a manager at one point because she really wanted to change nursing. And I just feel like we just had been talking about that so much. And driving home, we said it at the same moment. We're like, what if we do a podcast together? Like I've had this like weird feeling that like we need to do a podcast together. And I don't usually listen to my gut very often, but it was something that like felt really good. And every time we told people, it was like, oh my gosh, I would listen to you guys like, and I am a person that I'll like say I'm going to do something. And then if I don't do the action, then it's never going to happen. And so a couple days after, we're like, we really need to do this. Like, this is really needed in the nursing profession. Like, it would be great to have two different perspectives, her perspective being in the nursing field for 40 years and mine being it's just now 9. So we both have a combined almost 50 years of experience. And so this was just really needed. I've never seen a mother-daughter podcast, let alone a mother-daughter nursing podcast. And so it was different. And so I like got the name on Instagram and I started posting about it, and I got so much great feedback from you guys and from people who have been following me and following her. And I think it was like that good feeling that like this is what we were supposed to do. And we just have so many great ideas for like topics to bring to you guys and like resources. And yeah, so it was just one idea and we just kind of ran with it. And now that it's January, we're coming at it, and hopefully we'll bring you guys some great, resources. And
Yes, I love that how Ali, we do talk almost every day, and she'll usually like throw out things like, should we do this? Should we do that? Like we'll talk about all things like she said, her siblings, we'll talk about her boyfriend, my husband, men in general, that kind of stuff, but mostly nursing really, because we found together that there is a culture that we do need to change. And she did mention that I went back and I actually am an associate degree nurse to start with. And then I had my kids, raised my kids, and then got a divorce and needed to go back to work full time. And so I got back in and I'm like, man, I always wanted to get my master's degree, but that wasn't really very well supported in I call my previous life. So in my previous life, so I went back to school. The kids were super supportive. So I actually worked full time, went to school, and had 3 kids as a single mom. And they watched me go back to school and do all that. And then I learned so many different things. And I was like, wow, we should really be changing so much in nursing. So I thought, I want to be a manager and see if I can change it at the place that I work and then change it at the corporation that I work. And that really didn't go very well. So I stepped down from that. And then, but I was in the middle of my master's program. And one of the things that I do love, as well as Ali, is teach. And I'm not sure I want to go back into the university or, that arena and teach, but I would love to go and find an avenue. And that's how this came up, because we could start from the inside out instead of, I was always thinking starting from corporate. But the thing we need to do is we really need to change all of our perspectives and figure out what it is we want as nurses. And then we change collectively, which will change everything at the top. And so when she said, do it, I don't really love to see myself on camera or like do all that kind of stuff, but I've been better on social media recently. So I was like, man, this sounds awesome. And then the same thing that Ali had is that I told some people and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, you guys should do it. We want to be on your show, and that kind of stuff. So I do think that we should actually have a show that we bring on different people and then get their stories and have them come tell their stories. And what do they want to see changed in nursing? What are the things that they want to see different? And there was just one more thing that I wanted to add. We had already been talking about the podcast. Actually, it was the week before, and then it was our birthdays in November. And we went to New York and we sat in the back of this taxi. And in the taxi thing, there is a sign that says it's a federal offense to assault the taxi driver. And I was like, hey, Ali, look at this, because it's not a federal offense to assault a nurse. And even state to state, there may not be anything that, even happens to your assailant. And so we are like, wow, we really need to change the rhetoric. There is so much responsibility on us as nurses, but yet for the people that we care for, there's no responsibility to be respectful to us. So that really resonated with both of us.
And I think at one point we'll do an episode on that, and maybe someone who has had that experience. I have so many connections with my Instagram and my TikTok and just people I've met in the nursing field in general, that I think this will be a really great place to give you guys resources too, because I already have a couple guests that I have asked specifically that will kind of help our mission and give you guys those resources that you guys need. So thank you for being here. We are so excited for this new journey, and we'll see you soon. Our mission with this podcast is to create a community of nurses who want to change the field from the inside out. If this podcast resonated with you, make sure you like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast. It helps you stay up to date with future podcast episodes, and it also makes sure we create a large community of nurses who want to change the field.